Welcome back to the Empowered Woman, Badass, and Unfiltered podcast. Are you tired of arguing with your partner? Do you want to actually have a joyous relationship that you look like you post online? You know, the one that you post where you're happy in your pictures, but you know you've been arguing the whole entire time? You really want to have a happy relationship? Well, okay. I got Linda and Charlie Bloom here, and they've been doing this for a long time. They have been helping couples, individuals as well, all of my life, more than all of my life, actually since 1975. And they have a book that has just launched, and we're going to get into that and talk all about that. They have also authored 5 other books. All of their information is linked below in whatever it's called where you're receiving this information. So if it's on YouTube, in the you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying, people. Anyway, thank you, Linda and Charlie, for being here.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you. Thanks for inviting us.
Of course. So I was given a lot of stats. And I talk about marriage from time to time. I've been married for 7 years, and I find that arguments, while if you don't work on them, they probably stay the same. They get worse. They get worse. So how do we make them better?
Well, it's a very important question that you're asking, and I wish everybody was asking that question of themselves, because people settle for less than is available. And there's a whole art and science to being a terrific communicator, particularly about the gnarly issues that have a lot of emotion connected to them. Like when we get frightened and when we feel hurt and when we're worried that we're not going to get our needs met. And so we may have a lot of conversations about the same subject, but hopefully with an intention to learn and grow and understand each time the topic gets a little bit more manageable. And some of the really hot ones, money, how to raise the kids, sex, the in-laws, how to spend your leisure time. These are fraught with a lot of emotion because we're drawn to our compliments. They think differently than we do. They have a different history than we do. They have different life goals, sometimes different values. And so we need to have many conversations with a spirit of goodwill and with that intention to learn and understand, not necessarily agree, but to learn and understand is a lot.
I like that. Have many conversations with the spirit of goodwill, with the want to learn. You got to do that when you're happy. You know, like when y'all are not arguing, you can't, you're going to have those conversations first. One of the things I noticed in couples that are over 50, 39%, I believe that was the stat, of them argue over tone and attitude. And I think that people focus so much on communicating, but they don't really know how to communicate. They communicate to be heard, not to really have the other party understand their point and truly understand what the other party means. So how do you address that?
I think that this is a key factor in the whole question of at what point does a discussion become an argument, and what is it that would trigger that, activate that transition from a communication, a conversation, a discussion into the territory of arguing and fighting. And I think that point that you're making is really true. So many of us think that, well, communication is about, you've got to really speak the correct words. Well, communication is much more than that. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that most of what people respond to in communication has less to do with the words themselves than it has to do with other factors like body language and tone. And what we're responding to is not just the literal words. And that's why, self-help books talk about, well, this is the things you should say, and make I statements and not you statements, and all that's true. That's good. But what they're not really speaking to is, how is it that, what is your intention in having this communication, in this conversation? Are you clear about what it is that you want to have happen here? Do you want to coerce this person into coming over and agreeing with you? Do you want them to do something? Do you want to manipulate them into a position, or do you want to create a mutual understanding? And it's at that level of intention that things like tone and nonverbal communication and how you interact with that person are really going to come into play. What's your intent? So many of us view the other person as an adversary. And so as soon as you have that perspective, you've got to get them over on your side. And when two people are doing that to each other, that's what you call an argument.
I find, okay, I got married at 23. I'm going to just share personal stuff. And I don't think that I started acting right until I was like 3 years in, and even then, like, and that more so was not so much thinking about myself, but thinking of us as a unit. And I know that's a shift that I had to make, because it was very adversarial, because it was not a unit. And when you come together as one, you really do have to be a unit. Now, I do want to address a taboo topic that I feel like isn't talked about enough, but it's an increasingly changing problem with our society, with the legalization of many more drugs. So when you're dealing with somebody with substance abuse, and you're trying, and that's your partner. Now, I'm sure you guys have dealt with this type of topic with all of your years of experience. How do you deal with, or even somebody with PTSD, or someone that has a bad temper? How do you improve that type of relationship?
I'm really glad that you're asking this question. And I think that the two topics that you just brought up are related. We call it, when we teach our workshops, the conversion from me-ish to we-ish. And it takes some people a while to stop being self-centered, single woman syndrome, single man syndrome, and realize I need to be making this other person's needs as important as my own. Not less important than my own, but not more important than my own. When you interface with another person and you commit to them, you bring your baggage and your problems, they bring theirs. And if they are willing to work on whatever baggage they bring, like alcohol addiction, like drug addiction, like post-traumatic stress disorder from some traumas from their past, you've got a winning combination there, because both of you roll up your sleeves and get to work. When it goes into the deal breaker category is when they're in denial about their drug addiction or their past that is haunting them and wrecking the relationship. Mm-hmm. And if people are stubbornly refusing to face that they've got work to do, then it is appropriate to move back into the me-ish stance. Because if they don't want to play the we-ish game, then you would be sacrificing yourself too much to play a we-ish game. Then you become a codependent, the sacrificing martyr, and your own well-being and health and longevity will be compromised. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really careful about where those lines and boundaries are.
Yeah.
And that right there is very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, it's so good to have boundaries, but when it comes to actually implementing the boundaries, that's when the hard work comes. And it's very uncomfortable to implement boundaries, especially with your significant other, especially if you've been in this codependent relationship for some time. Let's say you're helping a couple in that type of situation. How do you address that?
Well, that's a really common phenomenon, and we run into that all the time. And it's not enough just to understand that, oh, I need to draw the line here because this isn't working for me. Implementing that into your relationship is really challenging. And it's because it feels very, very risky. You know that every time you set a boundary, you're risking the relationship.
Ooh.
It's a risk when you say no, when you say, I'm sorry, but this does not work for me. When you say, I can't agree to that. Whenever you make it clear that you have the authority over your own experience in this relationship to set a standard that you need to uphold to influence your own sense of integrity. And that's what boundary setting is. It's about living in integrity with who you are, not with about somebody else's idea of how you should be. It's a risk. And it's a risk that, you know, a lot of us are really afraid or unwilling to make if we don't feel secure in the relationship. And so if you don't feel secure in the relationship, you'll lie. You'll pretend, oh, you'll go along with it. But underneath the surface, you're not okay. But you go along with it out of the fear that if I don't, you know, she or he is going to leave.
Mhm.
So safety is a huge part of any healthy relationship. And how do we create safety? Well, we don't show up as an adversary to the other person. We don't try to control them or manipulate them. We just speak about, here's my truth. Here's what I need. Here's what I want you to understand about my experience right now. We listen. You know, we do the things that we know we need to do. But yeah, you're right. It is hard. It is scary. It is risky. But the alternative is, you know, you might end up staying together, but what kind of a relationship are you going to be in? You've set a precedent here that basically tells them that they can get away with something.
Mhm.
This draws me into one of your questions, but before I get into one of your questions, I want to address something. You have to know who you are.
Yep.
In order to really enforce your own boundaries and have this identity, because you have to know who that person is as an individual. And I know a lot of people have a lot of I won't just say it's just women either. A lot of people are in codependent relationships, and they started out one way, and I'll see people do a lot of personal development in other areas of their life, but they haven't addressed their relationships. So their relationship might be as young, maturity wise, as it was when it first started. Which brings me into your next question, one of your suggested questions. What do you mean when you say we shouldn't choose our battles?
When this is a popular notion that you should choose your battles, and there is some truth to it, that we have to be careful not to squabble about every little thing. We have to see how much we can let go of and which are the ones that are important that we need to take a stand about. But why we shouldn't pick our battles is you're already in an adversarial frame of mind, that you're going into battle instead of we're discussing this topic, you know, for the purpose of understanding. And so shifting our attitude before we even bring the difficult subjects up so that we don't have a win-lose orientation, because that's what leads to arguments so often is we see a zero-sum game. Either I'm going to win or I'm going to lose. And we're always working with the couples that we work with our readership for our books and with our students in our workshop to get out of the win-lose mentality. Because what's true is if in a close relationship, anybody is losing, the both of them lose.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have
Mm-hmm.
anything but win-win in a close relationship, because even if you get your way about a certain thing, it erodes the foundation of trust. that safety and security that Charlie is talking about is diminished a little bit. The feeling of well-being, the feeling of joyfulness in the relationship gets tarnished. And so not having an adversarial kind of an attitude that we're going into battle, that we're choosing this issue to battle about, can be replaced with, I'm taking a stand about this. I'm really wanting you to understand how important this is to me, whether it's a boundary or a need or some feeling that keeps getting activated that really needs to be addressed. And taking a stand is different than going into battle. So we offer that when you feel like you're battling, to see if you can just shift your attitude towards one where I want to say what's really true for me. I want to be in integrity with myself. I don't want to sacrifice my truth, and I don't want to back away because I'm cowardly. I want to be a warrior woman. I want to be a badass. I want to take a stand, but I want to do it respectfully. And then I want to listen to what's true for you. And I want you to take your stand. And then we're going to find some common ground where we can both win.
Mhm.
I many times I've said, I'd rather collaborate than compromise. And I think that relates a lot to that whole ideology of more so looking for losing. I don't think that you have to necessarily lose yourself when you're married or when you have kids, but I do think that you have to, it's gaining a role to me. I recently became a mother. I gained the role of motherhood. I didn't lose myself, but the only reason I didn't lose myself is because I still kept doing the things that filled me. I have this child coming into my life, doing the things that I want to do, and we do as a family, like going on walks, going out to eat. I'm not going to stop my life because this kid is here. He's got to assimilate to life. Now, I know a lot of people when they have children, that's another big source of an argument on how to raise the kids, how to reprimand the kids. How do you suggest looking at it as a team, especially with blended families? There's so many blended families now. Can you speak to something on that area?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough being a parent when you have a co-parent living with you. It's a big job. I mean, that saying that it takes a village, that's not just a metaphor, that's the truth. It does take more than a mother and a father to adequately bring up a child. Unfortunately, in our culture, where the nuclear family is kind of the way it is seen as the way it's supposed to be, that's not doing so well. That model is breaking down, and the divorce statistics are really, and the statistics about children's mental health, they're all reflecting a real breakdown in this system that we have. So it's really important to recognize that it's not just about you and me and your psychology and my personality, and yeah, those are factors, but you've got to consider the cultural influence too on us, and how most families do not feel that they have adequate support, and even people who have enough money to buy the support, they're not necessarily getting the quality of support that the family system requires. So I'm afraid I might have lost the gist of your question, but it triggered this for me, because I think we just don't appreciate what a hugely important job it is that we have as parents, to set an example for our children, because they're watching us from the moment they open their eyes as newborns. They are watching us, and they are doing something that all animals do. They are imprinting on what they observe. And so many people are so concerned about getting their kids into the right schools and having them get, live in the right communities. And, oh, sure, that's great. That's important stuff. But the most important example you can set if you want your children to grow up to be happy, healthy, and have healthy relationships is to set an example of that. And in the process of trying to provide for all of these other material needs that we feel like we want to have our kids benefit from, we're not holding a very high priority on the example of our relationship. We're allowing ourselves to have relationships that have deteriorated, where we don't set the example of being able to reconcile differences skillfully, where we don't show them what a happy set of parents can look like and feel like, what a secure home can feel like. So I just find it really ironic that we all love our kids and we all want the best for them, but one of the most important things we can give them is something that we're not paying adequate attention to, which is the quality of our relationship that they're viewing.
I absolutely agree with you. That's my husband and I are coming up with because we had our baby on Christmas, and so right now he's very much a potato, and he can't, like, he'll see, he understands what a newborn will understand, but as far we're trying to establish what our core values are as a family, what the things we tolerate, the things we don't tolerate, and truly having unity. We understand that we're raising a human to go out into this world and hopefully do good things, and he is not ours to keep forever. He is our responsibility to just put as much as we can into and showing a healthy relationship is very important. Some notes that I took while listening to you. It's so important to know when and how to ask for help, the type of help that you need, especially in the communities, because it does take a village. We made the decision recently that we will have our son in private school, and my mother is very, very good at looking for scholarships. So I said, that's going to be her job. And I told my mother-in-law, I was like, I'm going to find a job for you too, because it takes a village, but knowing what type of help you need throughout each and every stage, I think is very important, and having that reflective time to be honest about that. Setting up an example of a healthy relationship should be one of your top priorities when having a child. So thank you for saying that. You're not only teaching them how to operate, you're teaching them problem-solving skills when you argue. How do we solve these problems? Crisis management, because guess what? Something's going to happen in them 18 years of life. Like, there's going to be something.
That's right.
Guaranteed.
So having them have critical thinking skills, implementing, showing them that, not just, what are the things, and people can hate me for this, but I think that we don't tell people when they're being bad parents early enough to make a difference. No one's perfect, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but there are things that are clearly not good for society.
Yeah.
And I believe that those really crucial conversations can happen more when the couple makes an agreement that if they are making unskillful choices, unwise choices, setting a poor example, being too indulgent or being too strict, or fighting too much in front of the kids, or not letting them see the differences at all, that's all behind closed doors, scares kids because it's the unspeakable, but they feel the tension, that the couple needs to make an agreement with each other that they are going to be honest with each other about what they observe and give respectful feedback, not accusatory, not you're bad, you're wrong, not what the hell's the matter with you, but say, I would like to share from my experience, this is not feeling good for me. You know, when you're too strict or you're too lenient, or when you too loud and cussing in front of the kids, or when you refuse to talk about things and you're dodging the issues that need to be discussed. And if you have that agreement in place and the person is not so readily available, you can say, remember, we put this agreement in place that we wanted to be the best parents that we could be. And I have some things that I want to bring to your attention. I hope that you'll hear me out. And I would want you to do the exact same thing with me. I trust that you will try to frame it in a way that is respectful and that you'll talk about your own experience from your feelings and what you need from me, not from your thoughts, which are full of opinions and often critical. And when they have that kind of an agreement, some really difficult conversations become doable. Yeah. And I always encourage people to put that foundation in place, that there aren't any taboo subjects. And one of the hairiest ones is about bringing up the kids, because, you know, our heart's so involved in it. We want to feel like we're the best parent that we can possibly be. And we're so sensitive if we think anybody's critical of the way we're parenting our children.
That is so true. That is, and I love that you addressed that too. It's so important that we hold each other accountable as partners for the benefit. It's so much, raising children is so much more important than us. We got to let go of a lot of ego stuff. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask another question that is on your list. Can you walk us through the 8 steps of finishing unfinished business?
Well, the first step is probably seems pretty obvious to most people, but that is to recognize and acknowledge to yourself and to your partner with whom the unfinished business exists that we've got a problem here. We. That's the important word, not you. So the 4 words that strike the greatest terror in the heart of any man is when a woman starts a conversation with the words, "We need to talk." If you really want to scare the hell out of your partner, start the conversation with that. So that's the first thing is to recognize, we do have a problem here, and it's not, and then to try to frame it not in terms of her problem or his problem, but our problem. We want to get, and this is the thing that we keep emphasizing with people that we work with. We want to move from a combative, kind of adversarial relationship where the other person shows up to us as an enemy, to a perspective where, we want to both get on the same page. Can we find an intention, a goal that we can both agree with? What do we want to have happen here? Maybe I don't agree with the way you're doing it. Maybe you don't think that the way I'm doing it is the right one. Okay, but what is it that what's the page we can both get on? What is it that ultimately, we want to have happen here in our situation, in our relationship, in our family? It's like you said earlier that you and your husband had a conversation and you talked about, what were your values, your goals, your hopes. And we want to get back to that, and so unfinished business really is about conversations that needed to have taken place, but they didn't happen because generally the reason is because one or both of us was too afraid to bring it up because it might, things could get even worse. Better let sleeping dogs lie, We've tried to do this before, and the harder we try to fix it, the more downhill it goes. We feel that sense of futility. Why even bother? So we've got to be willing to reopen the conversation that was unfinished. And I think one of the things that helps us to do that, to overcome our resistance to doing it, is the recognition that this is not going to go away. It's not going to get better. And it's in all likelihood going to get worse. That, you know, there are some things that you can let them go and it's not going to be a problem. But with unfinished business, where we both know that there's things that we need to address and we didn't do it, that is only going to deteriorate and go downhill further. So when you realize that, it makes it a little bit easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier to consider addressing this again. If we're unable to do this without activating each other, then it may be time to call in a third party. We always like to encourage people. We give people tools and things that they can do that might help them to do this work on their own. But, you know, there are times when we just need some help from the outside. We get stuck sometimes and in those places where we can't finish the unfinished business because our efforts just keep going round and round in circles. At that point, it is not a sign of weakness or stupidity to get help. It's a sign of intelligence that you know that you need to call in the cavalry here.
And I want to add, one of the important steps is that we make a distinction between getting complete and fully resolved. Because some people feel kind of defeated and hopeless, and what's the point of talking about this anyway? But if you have a conversation with the spirit of goodwill and you're learning and understanding, do you see that each conversation you can make a little progress? The energy is a little less heavy and a little lighter, but not to have the expectation that it's going to be once and for all. When we teach our classes, sometimes Charlie says, that's like expecting to eat once and for all. We have to do it over time, and you nibble away at the issue a little at a time, and congratulate yourself and each other for making a little progress towards understanding and cooperation.
Yeah.
I'm taking so many notes. Thank you. Thank you. This was so needed. I'm receiving some mindset shifts that people need to make overall from everything that we said, that you shared with us today. And one of them is having a spirit of we over me. Yep. The other is just having a growth mindset. And you know what that is, but if you're a listener and you're not sure what a growth mindset is, it's not having a limited mindset. It's not thinking, and it's not necessarily just positive thinking. It's more so, how can I make this better? How can we do this better next time? Type of mindset. You can look it up on Google. I've got more in this list. So the other one is acknowledging that nothing changes if nothing changes. In fact, it just gets worse. So if we keep leaving this unfinished business unfinished, it will, just like money, you know, if you don't pay your bills, it just gets worse. If you don't call the big bill collectors, they don't go away. You might want to wait 7 years for it to fall off your credit score, but you got to face the things that you're avoiding, personally and in your relationships. Ask for help and don't allow pride to stop you from getting that help. And, you know, that's why there's people like you out here with decades of experience to really help people walk through these problems. I know a lot of times when people are married, they feel like they're so alone. They feel like this is their own problem. They're isolating themselves, especially not talking about it. I know someone that refused to get help in their marriage because they refused to go to the church counselor because they didn't want them knowing their business. I'm sorry, but you're hurting yourself so much more. And now they're no longer together. And most importantly, give it time, because it's not going to happen overnight. And I like the reference of, you know, you're not going to eat once and for all. It is something that's going to happen over time. So thank y'all so much for joining me here today. I'm looking forward to reading an end to arguing. 101 valuable lessons for all relationships. And the links to purchase the book are in the show notes below, and the links to connect with Linda and Charlie Bloom are also there as well. Thank you both so much for being here today.
It was a pleasure to be with you. It was a joy to be with you, and thank you for the wonderful questions.
Thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Empowered Woman, Badass and Unfiltered podcast. If you found any value in this, please consider sharing and subscribing. Now go out and be a badass.